We're glad to see you that are here tonight live and those that watch the replay. Welcome. This is Discover Your Awesome Creation Vacation. And purpose on this is to help people design a creation vacation if they so choose to do so, or to find a group vacation that they can join together with. And so we're looking forward to that. We want to give you just a little bit of an introduction first about who we are and how we managed to get into this business with creation vacations even, but even before that, how did we get into the whole idea of creation and evolution? Because we were both raised going to public schools. We believed in evolution. I grew up going to church also, and at church I learned creation, and I didn't know what to do because I had both of these two models in my, being put into me. At church, I got the Bible, I got Genesis, I believed in it, I believed in Jesus as my Savior. And yet at school, I was getting this idea of evolution, and the two ideas just conflicted. They wouldn't go together, but I didn't know what to do with that whole thing. And so when I was in school, in high school, I just drew a big line down the middle, and I had church and the Bible and creation over on one side of the line, and on the other side, I had evolution at school and, what I thought was science on that side of the line, and they never met. And it was, that's just kind of the way it was. I didn't even really think too much about it. I thought, well, maybe creation's the religious explanation and evolution's the scientific explanation. Well, I went from there to a church college my first year. And at the church college, they said, oh, did you know that Genesis is a myth? It was written for primitive people who couldn't understand the science of evolution, and that those days weren't real days. They were periods of time, millions of years long, and somehow God must have used evolution as his method of creating. And I thought, oh, good, now that wall can come down and I can put the two together. Well, over in the science department at that church college, they taught evolution just the same way they would teach it anywhere in a public university. And so I was very thoroughly indoctrinated in evolution. I just at that point thought, well, God was involved with it somehow. I wasn't sure how or when or any of that kind of thing. I still thought the earth must be billions of years old and so on. I thought the fossils were good evidence for evolution and, typical stuff that you learn in school and that you get from the books and that you get from the national parks and the zoos and museums and everywhere you go. I went from the church college to a public university, and of course there, all you get's evolution. They don't say God did it, they just said evolution is true. And at that point, a lot of students at that point will totally junk their faith. They'll just throw it completely out. I'm thankful I didn't go quite that far with it, but my life I wasn't living a godly life at that point at all. I was very backslidden and I think a lot of it was because of this evolutionary conflict. Some of it was also I just wasn't prepared for the social scene at college the first year that I went. So I went to public college. I got more and more evolution. I ended up graduating from Colorado State University. I had a degree in biology, and I was ready to go teach biology. But what could I teach? All I knew was evolution, because that's all I'd been taught. I thought it was a scientifically proven fact. And so when the book taught evolution, I taught evolution too. And we taught in high school down in New Mexico. And then later on, we went to Alaska. We taught in a small junior college up in Alaska. It was church-related college. And they didn't care that we believed in evolution because everybody on staff, the whole biology department, science department, really everyone believed in evolution. That's all we were trained to think about. And so we were in that situation for a while until, God has this way of intervening in our life, doesn't he? And one day I was shopping at a little secondhand store up there in Alaska, and I got a hold of a book called Evolution, The Fossils Say No by Dr. Duane Gish. And I bought that little book for 5 cents at this little secondhand store. Dave says, good thing it wasn't a dime. We were on such a limited budget at the time that he thought maybe I wouldn't have bought it for a dime. But I bought that book. I brought it home. I read it, and I gave it to Dave to read. I mean, I thought that the fossils were the best evidence of evolution because they're the only real hard, cold facts that we have of this evolutionary process. So I read it, and then Dave read it from his perspective. He had a lot more background in geology and studying fossils and, looking for dinosaur bones out on the desert and stuff, and petrified wood and all kinds of stuff. And he read it too. And we both at that time went, whoa, wait a minute. I thought that evolution was a proven scientific fact. And as we looked at that, we went, there's problems with this evolution model. We better just start doing some thinking and some research. And so we started researching this whole issue of creation versus evolution, doing the study on our own rather than just what we were taught in school. And as we studied, we became more and more convinced that there was abundant evidence for creation, and that actually the creation model would fit better with the scientific evidence than the evolution model did. It took us a while after that to really come to grips with the idea of how old the Earth was. And we had a pastor up in Alaska who, he was from this area of Western Colorado where we're from. And he said to us one time, don't you just see evidence for the flood all over Western Colorado? And we were polite. We didn't laugh in his face, but we went home and we just thought that was so funny. He believed in the ark and he believed in the flood. Well, guess what? The next time we got back to Western Colorado, everywhere we looked, we saw evidence of this flood. And so we began to not only believe in creation, but also the historical reality of Genesis 1 through 11 as foundational to our faith. At that point in time, we had a student in Alaska. His name was Jeff, and he was a wildlife biology student, and he had grown up in a church home, but he rejected evolution because, or rejected Christianity because of evolution. And one day he said to Dave, I just can't buy this Jesus stuff. And Dave said, why not, Jeff? He said, because evolution is a fact. That means Genesis is false. That if God can't get the first book of the Bible right, why would I believe anything else he has to say? And that was a really good point, wasn't it? If you know the author is lying at the very beginning, why in the world would you want to believe any of the rest of it? Well, we had Dr. Henry Morris come up from the Institute for Creation Research, and he did a series of lectures on campus for us up there at this little college in Alaska. And Jeff came to those lectures, and at the end of time, he said to us, if evolution isn't true, that doesn't leave much, does it? He said, I better start doing some thinking. And within just a couple months after that, Jeff became a Christian because now he had a foundation for faith. Now he could believe that Bible was true from the beginning. At that point was when we really felt like God was calling us into a creation ministry. Before that, we were really excited that there was scientific information that supported and affirmed what Scripture taught. But when Jeff became a believer, that's when we saw, wait a minute, this is more than just a scientific issue. This has long-term spiritual consequences. Now some people will say to us, oh yeah, but don't, it's not a salvation issue. So why are you so worried about this creation issue? And I'm going, well, yes, it's not a creation issue in that or salvation issue in that we're not going to have to take a test. We get to the pearly gates, do you believe in evolution? What are the evidences? So on. It's not a salvation issue that way. But if if evolution is the main thing that keeps people from coming to know Jesus in the first place, if it keeps them from believing that the Bible is God's word, it's true and believable, and it's a stumbling block to salvation, well, then it does become a creation issue. We know that we are saved by placing our faith and trust in the completed work of Jesus on the cross. But it's this idea that students are getting bombed with evolutionary thinking. They get told that evolution is science and creation is only a religious myth. And so they want to be scientific. And so they end up oftentimes rejecting their childhood faith. I find it interesting how many students have told us that they went and they examined what they were taught at church and they threw it out. But how many times have you heard a student say, I went back and I evaluated what I was taught in school and I threw some of that out because it didn't fit with the facts? People are very willing to question their faith, but they're not so willing to question what they were taught in school. And so we see students all over the world today that are just being bombed by these evolutionary model of that evolution is science and creation is religion. Well, we finished up our work up there at the college in Alaska, and eventually we went out to the Institute for Creation Research, to the graduate school out there. That was way back in 1982. Our boys were very young at that time, and we went out to the ICR and were able to be taught and discipled by some of the very best, the leaders in creation science at that point. We feel very, very privileged that we were allowed to do that, and that was part of our training. After we graduated from ICR, we started our creation ministry. We founded Alpha Omega Institute in 1984. And our purpose at that time was just to share what we had learned and wherever people would listen. So we took off in our little Volkswagen van and we started going all across the country, any place we could. We bugged all our friends and relatives, can we come do a seminar in your church? And, then that would lead to other contacts and other contacts. And so that was the way we started out with the Alpha Omega Institute and our creation ministry. It's grown since then. We have more people on staff, and altogether now AOI speakers have been to more than 30 different international countries, and some of those we have repeatedly gone back to, like Costa Rica, and so we see that what God began back there, which we never had any idea that we'd be going internationally. We were just sharing what we had learned, and we were excited to be doing that. Tonight, what we want to do with the rest of the time this evening is we're going to be sharing a few of the evidences, and just to show how these evidences can be interpreted from a creation point of view, the things that are typically taught as evidence of evolution, and what's a different way to interpret those things within a creation model. And then later on today, we're going to look at the creation camps and vacations and start giving some ideas on that. Tomorrow night, we're going to look at some of the ideas about why creation vacations are so very important. And we're also going to be looking at some ideas for designing your own creation vacations. And then we will be talking more about some of the other vacations that are potentially possible for you when we look at on Wednesday this week. And so we hope you'll be able to come back for those or watch the replays for those. But I'm going to turn it over to Dave now. He's going to talk more about the fossil evidence, because really, like I said earlier, the fossils are the hard facts we have, right? Hard facts from the earth. And they are usually taught as the best evidences of evolution.
Yes.
Take it over, Dave.
What I'm going to do is basically show you that you'll look at museum exhibits when you go on vacations, you go to the zoos, you go to all different places, and you're going to get all this kind of stuff that says this proves evolution. And we're going to show you a couple of those things first, so that we kind of establish a bottom baseline here. So we became known frequently, and especially in my presentation, as the "what's the evidence" guy. Basically, getting kids to ask what's the evidence when they see a picture or a museum exhibit. So one of the things we do is, like that particular drawing, what's the evidence how that salamanders are going to turn into the mouse? It turns out they have no evidence for that. You have salamanders, yes. You have mice, yes. Nothing in between, but a lot of good artwork. So that's why we started telling young people to say, great artwork, what's the evidence? One of the best ways of getting them to ask that question is if they spend enough time with us. And once they spend enough time, they all of a sudden start picking up that, what's the evidence? So it's kind of fun to see that. So this is out of a textbook. And basically, you can see the same thing in museum exhibits as well. And it'll show how the lobe-fin fish crawled out of the ocean and changed into the amphibians and then the reptiles and later became you. So the kids need to ask, great artwork, what's the evidence? And it turns out nothing was ever found between those two at the time the book was written. And so how can something missing show how this process of evolution took place? They don't have the something in between. So since the time we started doing that, they've had several different candidates for the transition from fish to amphibians crawling out on the land. But it turns out everyone fizzled, including the one that Bill Nye, the science guy, tried to use against Ken Ham in a nationally televised debate. And that's Tiktaalik. And it turned out that even that one has now fizzled because now this is supposedly evolving into four-footed creatures. The problem is below where this was found in other rock layers, they found footprints of four-footed creatures crisscrossing back and forth. And that's way before this guy. So according to Jennifer Clack, University of Cambridge, said, we thought we pinned down the origin of limbed tetrapods. We have to rethink the whole thing. And that's fairly recent. Another one that they've been using a lot is just trying to prove evolution. Go to the museums, you'll see it. They're there. When you take a vacation, you're going to get a strong dose of evolution unless you're prepared. Basically, this is from the NOAA. And here it is, grade 4, unit 4 lesson. Grade 4. They're going to show you how the creature in your upper left-hand corner evolved into the blue whales, etc. And oh, really? That's great artwork. What's the evidence? We're going to look at it. So they say this guy is going to turn into this humpback whale. Yeah, right. What's the evidence for that guy right there? The Cynonyx. Well, there it is in a museum exhibit. So hold on, great artwork. Look at that dog-like creature. How do they know that's going to turn into a whale? Anyhow, what's the evidence for that? Turns out all they had was a piece of a jaw and well, a few teeth and one other bits and fragments of it, but they think that's what he looked like. So you can see there's not much evidence to get that great drawing. And when we pointed out to kids, boy, you should have seen probably what happened when they went to other museums and they saw what really was the evidence, or at least asked the questions. This is on the front cover of Science magazine. It's called Pakicetus. So great artwork. What's the evidence? What was the evidence for all of that? Well, it turned out all they had was a couple of pieces of teeth and in the jaw, a little bit of a jaw, and one bone at the back of the head. And that's all they had. There was no backbone, no tail, no legs. So how can something without any legs prove a whale walked? So the kids loved working on that. Now they have more evidence. and they think this is what Mr. Pacasitas looked like. But my question is, which is the correct model? The 1983 one or the 2004 model? And so important for kids to ask, what's the evidence? And you see something like this at a museum exhibit. This is right out of a museum. Wow, great artwork. What's the evidence? Wait a minute. You are seeing the evidence, aren't you? Actually, no. You're seeing what the artist has already done with that evidence. Okay? You still have to ask it. Well, you see a whole skull shown in many different places, many museums, has this cast that was came from a different museum. And great artwork. What's the evidence for that? Well, it turned out they didn't find the whole skull. They didn't find that many bones, even though they show you all of this skeleton. Here's what they found. Not much, is it? All right, as far as the skull, notice some things about the skull. The portion that would show a blowhole indicating potential whale is missing. The only thing they found is the part of the skull that's dark in color here. Everything in gray or silver gray is added for your viewing enjoyment. They did not find it. You go to a museum like the Denver Museum or St. Louis Museum, and you're going to see Lucy. And this is right off of a card they were given out at the museum. And you say, Lucy, wow, gorgeous face for Lucy. Look at those hands. The problem is when you ask what's the evidence, you find out she didn't have a head. Nope, I'm sure she did, but not in the fossil record. And notice no hands, no feet. Really? But how come you go to the museum in Denver and you see Lucy? It's got the whole head, got hands holding on, feet holding on. Again, it's all artwork. And the kids need to know that. And we hope when kids come, say, to any of our programs, whether they be our seminars or our other programs we might do at camps and tours, that they would begin asking that, what's the evidence? Well, now they have a head for Lucy. The problem is the head was found somewhere else, not with the rest of the skeleton. And now look at the bias that shows up. They think creationists are biased because they won't accept evolution. But look, listen to this. From such disparate creations as bats, birds, and butterflies all have wings in common. But they had to evolve from somewhere. See, they're assuming evolution, aren't they? And this is very important when you go on a vacation. Point out these things when you see them to your kiddos. Okay. Mary Schweitzer has now been well known for finding soft tissue in petrified dinosaur bones. Wait a minute, aren't those things millions of years old? How can you have soft tissue? Well, that has posed a real problem. And in fact, she tried to get her data published, and she wasn't even a creationist. She said, I had one reviewer tell me that he didn't care what the data said. He knew what I was finding wasn't possible. I wrote back and said, well, what data would convince you? And he said, none. Why? Because he knows you can't have soft tissue preserved over 100 million years of history. It would deteriorate. They've also found red blood cells, DNA strands, etc. So Mary Schweitzer went back to the drawing board and said, maybe there's an explanation. So she tried some ostrich tissue, and he found out that, she could soak ostrich tissue in concentrated hemoglobin that would assimilate iron. Maybe that'll help preserve it. Well, sure enough, it helped preserve it. But the problem is there's a huge extrapolation. There's where your bias is coming in. Your problems with an answer that's hemoglobin is you might get 2 years, maybe 1,000, but 180 million years. Come on now, that's really stretching it. And not only that, but iron is not present in many of the fossils that have been found. So iron is not the issue. And then they use concentrated hemoglobin. Where do you get concentrated hemoglobin? From the chemistry lab. You have to go on the stock shelves. There you might find it. But besides that, you have to keep the whole thing dry. but bury it deeply and rapidly. And virtually all of these dinosaur fossils have been found in what are called fossil flood deposits. It could be river deposits. It could be a massive Noahic flood deposit. But all of these dinosaur bones were in very deep, saturated with water type of environment. So you can't keep it dry. All right. Well, it wasn't just dinosaur bone that were found with soft tissue. There are hundreds of various fossils now that have been found with fossils preserved. And they go clear back, not just 180 supposed millions of years, but what they say is over 550 million years of history. So how do you keep it preserved? Okay. And so, look, again, is the bias very important to show the bias that enters into some of the museum exhibits, like dinosaur definition. It says it's an upright hip structure, different than a crocodile. So they've now, just by definition, eliminated any of the crocodilian type of species as dinosaurian. Okay, so there's an upright thing there too. But now, listen to the next piece of their bias showing and how it progresses into bird evolution. They notice that, let's see, dinosaurs have an upright structure. Birds have the dinosaur type of hip structure. Evolutionary conclusion, all birds are dinosaurs. Then the evolutionary reasoning, feathers found in dinos and dinosaur layers prove dinosaurs definitely wore feather. But what if there were birds at the same time, got trapped in some kind of a flood? Then yeah, you'd find feathers in with the dinosaurs, wouldn't you? Well, did you know that fossils of modern animals such as sandpipers, loons, ducks, flamingos, cormorants, albatross, parrots, owls, penguins, robins, they're all birds, plus mammals, opossums and hedgehogs, and different reptiles and amphibians have all been found in dinosaur rock layers. So I guess if you find a parrot, you'd expect to find feathers as well. But then again, all birds are dinosaurs, and dinosaurs are feathers. That's the bias. National Geographic picked up on this too and said, oh, we found the missing link. We found a dinosaur with feathers here. And if you use your imagination, you can see this black looking carbonaceous fuzz. They said those are feathers. You know, when you see a feather in the fossil record, it's very obvious. But look at that. From that little bit of fuzz, look at the bias entering in, making beautiful feathers for this creature. Well, it turned out that this one didn't stand up to scrutiny. Turned out that that was a hoax. Somebody put together several different fossils and then sold it for a museum, probably made a lot of fraudulent money while they're doing it. Others also fell from the sky too. And but the bias allowed them to accept it quite readily. National Geographic shows how a wing is going to evolve from a leg. So the leg gets a little bit hairy, hairs turn into feathers, it gets more and more feathery, and eventually whatever this creature is, it takes off and flies away. So there's their dinosaur to bird path. The problem is there's a lot of bias in here. For instance, this is not the order they found him. This is all great artwork as well. What's the true order? We show that. Our artists on staff at the time showed that sure enough, you find dinosaurs here. But wait a minute, there are true birds up here flying around. But wait, even before some of the dinosaurs, look at that. They're birds, true birds. Way down before the dinosaur, true birds. So we're saying, wait a minute, how could dinosaurs evolve into birds if birds were already there? So ask your kids that when you go to a dinosaur museum, because they're going to get the idea that dinosaurs finally evolved feathers and turned into birds. So it's out it's the wrong order. Where's the bias showing up? Kevin Padian illustrates that. He says, oh, no problem that it's in the wrong order. He said, we don't always get everything in the fossil record in perfect order. Yeah, there is a problem with that. My question is, so did dinosaurs evolve into birds? The answer is no. They've now found a theropod dinosaur with 3 birds in its stomach, and those are true birds. So what is happening is they are eating the birds, not evolving into them. Okay, but think about it. Does evolution produce such amazing design? I have a hard time thinking about a dinosaur evolving into the intricate flight of the hummingbird. I think you would too. All right. We see amazing design everywhere. When you go on vacation, start looking for that design. Look at the hummingbird. I don't care. You might even be in your backyard on vacation. But look at the birds, the hummingbird. Go to our website, find out some information about that hummingbird, and teach your kids about the creation of the hummingbird with marvelous design. And whether we're looking at the DNA or cells or everything that's going on inside of a cell, it turns out that there's no way that could happen by accident. So what's the evolutionary bias here? And here it is. Ignore it. Even if all the data point to an intelligent designer, such an hypothesis is excluded from science because it is not naturalistic. What it means is we can't have a designer because we have to explain everything we see in the world by only naturalism, which means natural processes without God. And so that's where we're up against a brick wall frequently. And I like to point out to people that evolution is not science. It's a philosophy posing as science. And it turns out that evolution is the pillar of the naturalistic worldview. And that's what our kids are being taught in schools all over this world. You know, Colossians 2:8 says, see to it that no one takes you captive through philosophy. Wait a minute. If I said evolution is not science, but it's a philosophy, then don't be taken captive by evolution, correct? So that's what we're seeing. Yeah. I was actually in Oregon one time giving this lecture, and I mentioned that evolution is not science, it's a philosophy. Some gentleman ran up to my wife afterwards and says, you know, your husband just changed my life because he said evolution was not science, it was philosophy. He said, I have struggled with this all my life. Now that cleared it up. All right. In 1986, we began doing creation camps and retreats, started tours after that. But originally, we started with Red Cloud, Twin Peaks. And we really had a great time fellowshipping with people, making great friends, and basically learning about creation and having the kids learn about asking the question, what's the evidence? All right. So that's where we ended up doing here. And so after those original camps and tours, we ended up doing tours of the Southwest United States, Yellowstone, Costa Rica. We have another one up at Twin Peaks up in the mountains in Colorado as well. But we understand the importance of creation vacations. And yes, we do offer them, but there are other vacations that you can do as well. Hopefully we'll give you some ideas of those. Okay, but why? Why the creation vacations? Why camps and tours? Well, number one, we think it's the best way to be able to spend time with people so that they're not just getting a little bit, they're getting enough information to realize they're going to have to totally throw out the evolutionary idea. Mary Jo, you want to add to that?
Yeah, we started we thought about doing creation conferences because we saw that we needed a more than just we'd get in a normal church seminar. And but then we thought, well, people have such limited vacation time that they're not going to want to come just to a conference. Their kids, especially, and the parents too. They need a vacation. They want a real vacation, and so they want some time that they can get away and they can create family memories together, and they can see some of this beautiful world that God created, and at the same time learn some things, but have a great time doing it. So that was one of our big aha moments. I think we started doing these creation vacations, and with that in mind, that people wanted a real vacation, but they wanted a vacation with a purpose also, where they could learn something at the same time. So that we found there's so much value also in spending time in nature, seeing what God actually has made. And that can be even in, like Dave said earlier, in your own backyard. It can be in your hometown area. It doesn't have to be halfway around the world. I mean, we have parks and zoos and so on all around the country. And so, there are things that could be done very, very close to home. And another reason we wanted to start doing the camps and tours was we were leading camps and tours for the Institute for Creation Research. They invited us to, after we graduated from the ICR grad school, they invited us to come along and to be leaders of some of their tours, including their backpacking tours down the Grand Canyon. And we saw what that did for people, and especially the amount of fellowship that was able to be generated, and the fun that people had, and the amount of learning that went on at the same time. But as we looked at those tours, we realized that, not everybody could afford those tours. They were more luxury tours. They had big luxury tour buses and so on, and stayed in very nice hotels, which was all very wonderful, but most average families couldn't afford to do that. And so we started looking for creation vacations and tours that average families could afford to do, and maybe even take them a while to save up the money, but most people could do it if they really made it a priority. And so when we started doing those kinds of camps and tours, we wanted to get people out into God's creation, away from their cell phones. And well, back then there wasn't even really cell phones too much to worry about, but it did get people away and give them time together as a family with other like-minded people. And so we looked at our vacations and we said, hey, we want people to have fun, but also to be able to learn some facts and to make great friends and to have some wonderful fellowship at an affordable price. And so we started doing those. Obviously, some of the camps and tours end up costing a little more. The Costa Rica trip, we had to charge more because we do stay in hotels, and we have tour buses and Costa Rican staff involved and so on. But tours like the Yellowstone tour and others of our camps are very affordable for people. But then we just also started saying, okay, people need to also have a place where they can come and they might want to come back year after year, which is why we started doing some of the camps that were more stationary. These folks on here, they first heard about the camps from another friend that had come to one of our camps, and they ended up coming back year after year after year. And then they were also had a ministry where they were working with an orphanage in India, and so they were able to take what they learned at camp and bring it to India. So we have found over the years that the fellowship and the learning go hand in hand at these kinds of things. We'd like to know, though, and I don't know if either one of you or anybody can get on screen and just share. You think about vacations, most times they're great, but once in a while things go wrong, and and maybe it was a hassle making a vacation. So does anybody want to share anything there as far as your best and worst vacations from the past? If you'd like to share, go ahead and just unmute yourself, and if you can come on camera, that'd be great. And if not, we will just think about it if you don't have anything to share right
I
now.
think Chris has something to share.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
Chris.
This isn't a best or a worst, but when we went to Yellowstone, we took, we brought a group from Nebraska and we all carpooled up there, and I mean, took kind of caravan, several vehicles, and some new folks that we hadn't known real well. And we took a gentleman, and he brought his, I don't know if he brought his guitar that day, that time, or if he brought his banjo, but he'd play in the evenings before Dave would speak. And I still see him frequently, and he comes and tells me that that was a life-changing vacation. And he asked when we're going on our next trip. And anyway, so it's really stirred a lot of things for him up. And so when we see him, it's kind of fun because that's our connection point. He starts with that because he's really started to learn about creation, and so he always has to ask us, have you been going on more trips? And so it's kind of interesting that that's always just the starting point to a real spiritual conversation. So that's kind of a cool praise.
That really is. Yeah, that's good to hear. We don't hear these things sometimes, so it's really good to hear, because
Right.
that is the goal. And that's a cool thing too, when a group of people comes from one church or something, or from one location, or a whole family
Right.
grouping from all over the country. It brings a connection point where people
Right.
can create those shared memories, whether it's shared memory as a family together, or whether it's a shared memory for, other acquaintances that you might not have even known very well before coming on those kind of tours. We found that a lot of these relationships will continue on through too for years and years. So that's really good to hear, Chris. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
We had the privilege this June. We did a Yellowstone tour in June this year, and we had the privilege of taking our two grandkids with us that are 11 and 13. And boy, they had a ball. And we had them captive audience, basically, to be able to get a lot of creation teaching into their head during that time, as well as they just loved it. They just really ate it up and had a wonderful time with it. So that's good. I know some of the other vacations, I've heard of people trying to take a vacation, and they put it together, and it takes a whole lot of effort to put a vacation together, because you gotta go and book the hotels, and you book the airline tickets or whatever you're doing, and you book all this, and then you have to find restaurants, find where you're going to stay that night, figure out where you want to go, what you want to see, and so on. And it can be a hassle. But if you're willing to put in the effort, it can be very good. I remember when I was a kid, that's a long time back, but I really wanted to go to the Seattle World's Fair. And my dad told us kids, if we could save up enough money, we could go. And so one night while my parents were away, we took a map, we drew a map, and we divided it all up into little squares with a road leading to Seattle for the World's Fair, and each little square was $10 or something, I don't know, but we had to save up that money. And so we found all kinds of ways to save it up. My dad had his candy store above the refrigerator, and so he would buy bulk candy and then sell it to us and put the profits in there and sell it to our friends and the kids' friends. We worked some extra jobs, and if mom went to the grocery store, and if she didn't buy cookies that we might have expected to normally buy, then we'd put that money in there. And sure enough, we saved it up, which to me was one of the very best vacations. And I think it was because we anticipated it so long in advance, and we worked hard to make it a reality. And so for people with kids, wanting to take a vacation, there are ideas, ways to help for you or your friends, Chris, to be able to help your kids and help other people if they say, oh, we can't afford a vacation, it takes too much money. Say, well, there's ways to do it. If you just will start now and start saving. So anyway, do it yourself, DIY vacations. Chris, sounds like you're already planning some vacations. Is that right, for other people and yourself?
I've been asked to do several different vacations. We've done a few trips to the Ark, and then we do some things around Nebraska. Nebraska has a lot of good, stopping points. So we do some local things, some outreach. We went to Spring Canyon before as a family when you guys were up there. So we just try to do different things, get people thinking through, the worldview of creation rather than evolution. So so this is basically, I'm trying to get some good ideas, just to spur people on. I've just taken a position at the Boneyard Creation Museum, and we have people asking all the time about trips for their family that's creation focused rather than all the evolution stuff. So I thought, I see you guys are offering this. And I said, I just need to get some ideas and see how God through some of that stuff.
That's great. Yeah, we appreciate that. And that's great. And we also will hopefully learn some things from you about, your area better than we do. And so I think that compiling and pooling together our resource and our knowledge is going to be a really good thing. We were talking to him just recently. He lives maybe 45 minutes away from where we live, and he was talking about all the wonderful things to see around where he lives, and just right here in Western Colorado. So we are looking for ways also to do these, a half day or a 1 day thing or something,
right?
Especially if they have a lot of time, that will be good for them. So we'll be talking more about that probably tomorrow night, about some other ideas. I have we've compiled a list of ideas, and we want to keep adding to that list. So we'll be looking at that probably tomorrow night, I think, to look at and get some more ideas. So if you guys have things to share, that would be great. In fact, that would be a good thing for you to start thinking about, and maybe even before tomorrow, if you have time, to jot down some ideas in your area or other areas where you would want a vacation. One of the things that we're looking at also is the possibility to design custom vacations for people, so that, say they wanted to come to Western Colorado, or they wanted to go to Canyonlands and Arches. We do tours there also. And to be able then to help them to design a custom vacation together. So you could talk with your friends and see, what else might be really interesting to them. You have anything else, Dave?
Well, so the idea is, what do you want to do in a family vacation? What do you want to do, Mary Jo?
What do I want to do?
You never know, huh?
Yeah, that's right. I love to explore. I love to see new things. I remember when I was a kid, my mom would take us out in Minnesota, southern Minnesota. All the roads are laid out in a grid there, so we would drive on these gravel roads, and then we would come to a corner, an intersection, and we'd flip a coin to see which way we wanted to go, and we'd turn right or turn left or go straight ahead. I guess mostly it was turn right or turn left, and sometimes we'd get ourselves so lost. we'd pull into a farmer's yard and we'd say, how do we get back to our town? And they'd look at us like we were crazy, but that was a good way too. It was exploring things, or looking. We have a young lady staying with us right now for just a week. She's from Minnesota, and she's really into foraging and looking for plants and things that she can eat. And I think, oh, that'd be cool to learn that kind of thing. So there's a whole lot of things to do that could be done. And so we just would like to encourage you, tonight, take a little time as homework to think about what would you like to do as a family vacation or a group vacation with the people that you're working with. And if there was a way that we could work with you at AOI, that would be great to help you put something together that way. Or just that we might get some ideas from you of wonderful places where you like to go. We haven't been to the Ark yet. We are planning to go in a week from now. There's international conference on creationism that will be held in Ohio at Cedarville University. So we've booked tickets for that. So we're planning to go to that and then to go on down to the Ark and the Creation Museum. We've been to the museum before the Ark was built, but haven't been to the Ark yet. So we're really excited about doing that. And I know that becomes a destination for a lot of people who want to do a creation vacation. That makes a wonderful vacation spot.
Yeah, I'd like to do that too.
Yeah, Patricia.
Come with us, Patricia? Yes.
Yes, I want to go.
Hop on an airplane. It'll be 1 week from today, or a week and 10, 5, maybe 10 days by the time we're going to be there.
It will take many, many miracles.
Yeah. Patricia, you have the word go written on your forehead.
Yes.
Let's go.
That's about right.
Well, that's one of the things about Costa Rica. If we were to ask you, what could you do within, a half a day's drive from where you live, Patricia? Give us some ideas.
Yes. I will look for the ideas.
Okay.
But I tell you, I really enjoyed the Grand Canyon visit with you guys and going to the Canyonlands and Archers and all that. Is to be there and seeing, when I used to think it would take many, many years to carve all that the Grand Canyon did. And when I went with you and saw the shells on top and just the different explanations of creation and about the flood, really opened my thinking on creation more. It's good to hear a different explanation than what I've had thought for many years.
Yeah, right. Because you're taught one thing and then and then you get another side of the story. It can be very eye-opening to see that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And I think it's also, Dave used to say, well, I saw a picture, I don't need to go there. I think he's changed his mind. I think he's changed his mind. There's such a difference, from seeing a picture, even watching a movie and actually being there. I mean, watching a movie and documentaries and so on can be really, really educational and very much fun, but and yet just to be there, and especially to be there with like-minded people, it can really be a life changer. Like Chris, like you were saying, for this man that came with you to Yellowstone. So
go ahead, Mary Jo.
No, go ahead.
One of the things that we do offer, of course, and this is unashamedly a pitch for our own camps, and we do offer family camps through Alpha Omega Institute. Been doing that for a number of years, so I think we have most of the things already done, and sure does be to do it yourself vacation, but at the same time they're fun. We intend for them to be fun and quite educational. And the next one coming up, and if anybody wants to join that one, is July 30th to August 4. And boy, you've got to have to start planning real quickly for that one. All right, July 30, it's coming up. And it's in the mountains near Grand Junction, Colorado, on the fabulous Grand Mesa, uh, which is the largest flat top mountain in the world with over 200 lakes on it. But we not only have fun up in the camp, but get to see some great things, but also do go down, visit the canyons in the Colorado National Monument and do a dinosaur museum tour. And
We
so
were
those are great for families.
we were just up on Grand Mesa this last weekend,
Oh,
a few days ago, and we had a friendly bear that came around, and that bear hung around and hung around. He wasn't aggressive, but I think he wanted the chicken that we had broiling on the grill. But, beautiful, beautiful bear, and that was so much fun getting to see.
it stuck around for about an hour.
Yeah,
Unusual.
very, very unusual for
The
that.
only reason it seems to, from what I've been able to tell, is that somebody had been feeding it.
Yeah,
Either that or they've been finding food that some people left unattended or something like that. And
yeah,
once they do that, then they're hard to shoo off.
yeah, that's unfortunate. So hopefully these bears will get a little fear of man in them so that they get back in the wilderness where they belong, huh? But it was fun to see them.
Yeah. And so anyhow, we've got that one coming up really quickly. Just a little bit further down the road, and a month and a half is the August 25 through 29 Yellowstone Creation Tour, and the September 1 to 5 ones. And Patricia, I know you can come to that one, right? That'd be great if you
I
could.
love to.
I know what you mean. But anyhow, so you get to see all kinds of great things. And so those are the dates that we're going to be down in Costa Rica for the Creation Tour. They've now been advertised in our Think and Believe, and that's the actual tour. And this is Patricia, you have such a beautiful country down there. And after been doing university presentations, seeing a piece here, seeing a piece there, or more so the first time we went down, we've really appreciated that and realized other people would like to see what amazing evidence of creation to design, major design you have in Costa Rica. And
Thank
so
you. You're
that's,
welcome.
yeah,
You're welcome
yeah,
to
what a
come.
beautiful country you live in, Patricia.
You're welcome. You too, in a different way. But you're
Very
welcome to
different.
come.
Yeah. Yeah, you see more color in a frog than you do in most of Southwest United States.
That frog is called a blue jeans frog because
Yeah.
his legs look like little blue jeans.
Yeah.
All right.
And so anyhow, we're going to see if you have any questions now, but remember, if you want to know about one of our vacations and whether it be Yellowstone, Twin Peaks, or our Costa Rica one, visit our website. And we've got our Twin Peaks one, of course, updated. We also have our website updated for our Yellowstone tours, but I haven't yet updated the dates, etc., on our web for the Costa Rica. So just keep in mind the dates of February 25 to March 5, if you want to do that. So, but there's a lot of information. And this coming year, Patricia, we're going to go to a few new spots that we haven't taken tour groups to since. At least that's what Oscar is planning. Okay.
That's why we
Alright.
take the trips with Patricia so we can discover these new spots to go to, right, Patricia?
Uh-huh.
Yes,
That's-
I love that.
We love it. We love exploring.
I think Oscar put the place we explored with you, and he came along too to Tortuguero. So
Yeah.
I think he wants to put that one in this year. So,
Great place.
Yeah.